Chapter 10, Imperial China, the Examination System, Population Pressure, and the Mechanics of Senescence. Imperial China is the longest-running administrative machine in human history. Across more than 2 millennia, it constructed the most sophisticated bureaucracy of the pre-modern world, preserved an unparalleled civilizational memory, and repeatedly unified vast populations under a coherent institutional framework. Its enduring strength derived from a single structural innovation, a mechanism for selecting capable individuals at scale through the Civil Service Examination System, (KEJU). More clearly than any other civilization, China demonstrates both how capability can be institutionalized, and how institutionalized capability decays when demographic expansion, administrative overstretch, and elite reproduction erode its foundations. China's cycles are not cultural mysteries. They are mechanical outcomes of capability production confronting unbounded complexity. China's examination regime was its defining advantage. Developed from the Sui dynasty and perfected under the Tang, Song, and Ming, it created the world's first mass bureaucratic talent pipeline. Candidates competed nationally on literacy, memory, and mastery of Confucian philosophy. In principle, birth could be transcended. In practice, the system produced a stable administrative elite with unusually high capability density. For centuries, the empire was supplied with officials trained within a shared ideological and procedural framework. Standardization enabled coordination. Coordination enabled scale. No other civilization matched this institutionalized meritocratic intake. Yet the mechanism carried inherent limits. Preparation required decades of study, tutors, and financial support. Over time, elite families increasingly monopolized the educational pipeline, transforming an open filter into a hereditary conduit disguised as meritocracy. Capability was still selected, but from a narrowing socioeconomic base. More critically, the examination system scaled linearly. Population did not. China sustained populations far larger than any other pre-industrial society. Growth increased output and commerce but multiplied administrative labor, more households to tax, more disputes to arbitrate, more granaries to supervise, more infrastructure to maintain, more armies to provision. Complexity rose exponentially. The number of official posts, however, remained relatively fixed. Degree quotas did not expand proportionally with demographic expansion. The examinations became a bottleneck. Competition intensified without increasing the state's functional capacity. Selection increasingly rewarded test optimization rather than administrative competence, a classic case of institutional gaming eroding the very capability the system had once produced. This imbalance between capability production and demographic complexity defined the structural tension of every major dynasty. The Han dynasty offers the first clear demonstration. Population growth and territorial expansion increased administrative load beyond what central institutions could supervise effectively. Powerful families accumulated land, influence, and local administrative competence faster than the state could discipline them. Fiscal records diverged from reality. Military mobilization deteriorated. Central supervision weakened. When local elites accumulated capability faster than the center could integrate or constrain them, coordination collapsed. The fall of the Han was not merely political fragmentation, it was the mechanical consequence of administrative overload combined with elite capture. The Tang dynasty rebuilt the system through renewed central authority and an expanded examination regime. For a time, capability density again exceeded complexity. Yet even at its height, the Tang relied heavily on frontier military governors, jidushi. Population growth and persistent border pressures allowed these commanders to accumulate autonomous power. The structural imbalance culminated in the Anlushan Rebellion, 755 to 763, one of the deadliest conflicts in history, killing an estimated 15 to 36 million people. This was not an unforeseeable rupture. It followed decades of bureaucratic thinning and loss of central oversight. The rebellion succeeded because the Tang state no longer possessed sufficient capable officials and officers to supervise its periphery. Complexity outpaced capability. The dynasty survived, but it never fully restored its former equilibrium. The Song dynasty perfected the examination system and produced a scholar bureaucracy unmatched in intellectual refinement. It illustrates a different failure mode within the same structure: misallocated capability. Literary brilliance and mastery of classical texts were rewarded over strategic and organizational competence. The bureaucracy became procedurally dense and administratively sophisticated but militarily brittle. When confronted by cohesive northern powers, the state lacked operational capacity despite its intellectual strength. Capability existed, but it was concentrated in the wrong domains. Structural equilibrium failed not because capability vanished, but because it was improperly distributed relative to external threats. The Yuan dynasty inherited China's immense administrative complexity without inheriting the institutional machinery that had previously sustained it. Mongol elites ruled over a system they could not operate independently, relying on Chinese administrators while simultaneously denying them full authority. Authority lacked competence. Competence lacked authority. Enforcement fragmented. Capability density declined within the ruling structure. When the central system could no longer coordinate its own subsystems, collapse followed. The problem was not cultural incompatibility alone, it was structural misalignment between administrative complexity and ruling capability. The Ming dynasty attempted restoration. Early rulers enforced discipline and reasserted central authority, temporarily increasing capability density. Yet structural pressures returned. Population growth accelerated. Elite capture of exam preparation intensified. Administrative loads expanded beyond what existing quotas could sustain. By the late Ming, corruption was entrenched, governance inconsistent, and fiscal control weak. Imperial memorials and Donglin reform movements document office selling, bribery, and eunuch domination of court politics. The examination system still functioned, but it increasingly selected for memorization and patronage rather than administrative competence. Recruitment bottlenecks tightened while complexity continued to expand. External threats succeeded because internal capability had already eroded. The Qing dynasty temporarily restored order through strong leadership and strict discipline. For a period, capability once again exceeded complexity. But the 18th century brought explosive population growth. Administrative scale did not match it. Examination competition intensified while degree quotas remained fixed. Local governance devolved into informal gentry networks. Corruption spread. Reporting accuracy declined. The state progressively lost visibility into its own territory. When confronted by Western industrial powers operating at a higher technological and organizational plane, the Qing lacked the institutional capability to adapt rapidly. The deficit was structural, not civilizational. The Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, killing 20 to 30 million people, marked the terminal phase of this imbalance. It was not simply a peasant uprising. It was a systemic failure of Qing administration under fiscal collapse, fragmented command, and insufficient capable oversight. Foreign armies did not break China. Internal administrative exhaustion did. Across dynasties, the cycle repeats. Each regime begins with high capability density. The system functions because capability exceeds complexity. Over time, population growth, institutional inertia, and elite reproduction thin the intake pipeline. Administrative loads grow. Recruitment bottlenecks tighten. Capability declines in density, quality, or domain relevance. Complexity does not. The state compensates by lowering standards, tolerating corruption, decentralizing authority, or misallocating expertise. Eventually the gap becomes fatal. Collapse follows. Reset begins. China endured longer than any civilization because it institutionalized capability production. It collapsed repeatedly because that production mechanism could not scale indefinitely under sustained demographic expansion and administrative accumulation. The examination system was history's most sophisticated meritocratic filter. It was not flawed in design. It was bounded in throughput. When complexity outpaced capability, senescence followed. China's cycles are not mysterious. They are mechanical.